The FGC is a fast-moving genre. Games will come out, and within a couple of years, a sequel will be released, and then another sequel, and then another sequel, adding new mechanics, characters, stages, you name it. It's rare that older games are able to stick around as new iterations of a franchise continue to come out. But there are some older games that are memorable to fans and hold up to the test of time. From big titles like Street Fighter Third Strike to cult classics like Darkstalkers, these games all have something special that keeps fans coming back years down the road. One such game is Samurai Shodown, a 2D fighter originally released on July 7th, 1993. On release, the game brought a lot to the fighting game genre that these days have become the norm. Visually, the game raised the bar for stage design, with some of the most detailed background scenes fighting games had ever seen up until that point. Many of the stages found in the game wouldn't even look out of place in a modern-day fighting game, and this challenged other developers to match their attention to detail. Samurai Shodown also introduced new mechanics, most notably a rage meter, which is the first instance of any fighting game having another resource shown on screen other than a character's health bar. This laid the groundwork for EX meters in games like Street Fighter and the tension gauge in Guilty Gear. With everything the game had going for it, Samurai Shodown was an instant success in arcades. In Japan, it was the 6th highest grossing arcade game of the year, while in North America, it went on to be one of the top 5 highest grossing arcade games in 1994. Apart from the game's financial success, it was widely praised and won numerous awards, with many calling it not only the best fighting game of that year, but the best game overall. What set the game apart from many of its counterparts during the time was its simple weapon-based combat. Instead of huge combos and strings that most fighting games are centered around, Samurai Shodown was focused more on making hard reads and punishing your opponent's mistakes. Plus, the overall gameplay is pretty simple. There aren't too many concepts that you need to master before you can start playing, especially when compared to games like Guilty Gear with all of its meters and systems and air dashes and what the heck is a Roman cancel. But despite the game appearing fairly simple, it does offer quite a bit of variety, with each character having special abilities. For example, Yoshitora Tokugawa can insta-kill their opponent if he hits his special attacks. With its latest release, critics praised that the game was focused around footsies instead of the rushdown heavy gameplay featured in most modern fighters. Let's compare to Guilty Gear and its tension gauge, which rewards players for making aggressive actions such as attacking or just moving forwards, and threatens to deplete your entire bar if you're just hiding in the corner like a coward. Samurai Shodown, on the other hand, rewards you for being patient, waiting for your opportunity to strike, and getting the most out of your punish. Although Samurai Shodown is a bit of a departure from some of the bigger games of today, it's not without its issues, a long list of issues. Things like extended load times, a bare-bones story mode, the confusing ghost mode, and delay-based netcode, there were quite a few things going against the game. But despite this, the initial hype for the game was enough to grow a pretty big community and many large tournaments adding the game to their schedules. This included a spot as a main event game for EVO 2019. Along with other appearances at tournaments like CEO 2019 and EVO Japan 2020, Samurai Shodown had a solid start and looked like it might have been on track to become a mainstay title in the FGC. Unfortunately, while the scene was alive and well in Japan, the rest of the world quickly began to lose interest. Fast forward to the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, and Samurai Shodown quickly joined the long list of fighting games with bad netcode that were absolutely crippled by the move to online. But there were also tons of other issues that affected the game's overall potential and growth. The first big one was that Samurai Shodown didn't come out on all platforms at the same time. Upon the game's initial release, it was only playable on the Xbox One and PS4. It would take another 5 months for the game to release on Stadia, of all consoles, and then it released on the Nintendo Switch 3 months after that. The staggered release date segmented the community, and when the game finally released on PC on June 11th, 2020, it did so a year after the original release, in the middle of a pandemic, and was only available through the Epic Game Store, a service that virtually no other fighting game was on. It wasn't until a year after this PC release that players could actually get it on Steam, 2 years after the game first came out. And when it did come out on Steam, it was dead on arrival. Currently, Samurai Shodown averages less than 10 players on Steam. The main reason? Well, even though the game was 2 years old at this point and already in its 3rd season of content, SNK decided that it was still worth more than full price, and the game was only available to buy in a bundle with DLC content. The cheapest of these bundles was $74. With the DLCs only adding new characters and nothing extra in terms of game modes, the high cost is laughable, especially for a game that has pretty much no active community and such poor online infrastructure. But despite all the doom and gloom, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. For now, the game continues to receive support from its developers and recently completed its 3rd season of DLC. Along with that, despite some misses, such as the initial addition of the guard crush mechanic, which was met with some criticism, the game is also continuing to receive balance changes from time to time. In an interview after the game's release on the Switch, Yasuyuki Oda, the lead producer of Samurai Shodown, brought up that there are plans for the game's esports scene. They said, quote, "After the coronavirus is contained, we hope that we can work something out." While the netcode has ruined the online experience, it's very possible that a return to in-person events and tournaments could be the spark the game needs to return to the spotlight. While the community is already starting to heal as in-person events return, it's yet to be seen if these same effects will occur for Samurai Shodown. But there's one last thing we need to mention, and while it might not be directly related, it does merit bringing up, and that is the ownership situation of Samurai Shodown developer SNK. Currently, the Misk Foundation, an organization owned by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, owns 33.3% of SNK, but they intend to acquire another 17.7% share in the company, which would make them the majority shareholder. If and when this happens, SNK will effectively be under new ownership, which could drastically change the direction that the company is moving in. Whether that means less of a focus on Samurai Shodown and its esports scene in the future is unknown, but it's definitely something to think about. So let's come back to where we are now. As the community returns to normal, it'll be interesting to keep an eye on how much Samurai Shodown can grow and whether it'll be able to reach its previous peak as a game. Whether or not the game's release could have been handled better or scheduled a little bit more normally is going to loom over the community's head. What's important is how they move forward. Considering that this game is so different from most other fighting games, there's definitely a niche for it to succeed. Hopefully, as in-person events continue to return, Samurai Shodown will be one of those games that the FGC holds on to. What are your thoughts on Samurai Shodown? Do we need more sword-swanging, ridiculously violent fighting games? Or are fast-paced, rush-down focused fighting games the way of the future? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This video is made possible thanks to our wonderful patrons. Massive thank you to everyone on this list, and shout out to Jason, B, Brendan, QB, Foxy, Mauve, Pachanas, Sierra, Shampoo, Weeaboo, Spartacus, and Yashichi for being Platinum supporters, and an extra special shout out to Steven, Noodles, and Marco for being Diamond supporters. I'd like to personally wish you guys a very happy holidays. Check us out on Instagram, link in the description. If you want to support our channel and get info on unreleased videos, check out our Patreon. If you want to help us out in a different way, leaving a like, subscribing, and hitting the bell to stay up to date is also appreciated. My name is Jonah. Thanks for watching.